Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the passing of the deadline for Northern Ireland Assembly to set up their executive and discuss whether there's even a landing zone for it to ever really form again. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So ever since the Stormont elections earlier this year, the Assembly has been unable to do very much at all because the DUP, the largest unionist party, refused to form their part of the power-sharing executive with Sinn Féin. But this wasn't just because they were beaten into second place by the largest Republican party. They didn't like that much. But they'd been pulling the plug on the executive for weeks before those elections in protest at the Northern Ireland Protocol. What's difficult to deal with is a genuine compromise that would keep the main two stakeholders happy. The DUP don't seem to have technical objections to the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's entirely ideological. I've said before, the protocol actually gives unionists, if they're minded to use it, a certain leverage in the reunification debate. The Northern Ireland Protocol did not place trade restrictions between Britain and Northern Ireland, as some would like to characterise it. Brexit did that. Brexit determined, or the particular form of Brexit that we undertook, which nobody voted for, required a hard border somewhere, required trade borders. And all the protocol did was say, well, it has to go here. And that was the fault of the Conservative Party here in Britain. But it was also supported by the DUP, not necessarily where the border goes, but the fact that there would need to be one because they backed Brexit. So they don't really get to complain. See, what the DUP expected to happen was that normal third country WTO rules would apply, which would state, well, you'll have a hard trade border all around the third country, which is the UK in this case. So they thought we'd set up a hard trade border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. But this was plainly ridiculous to anyone other than people who can think the earth is only 6,000 years old. So if there had to be a trade border between Britain and the EU, that western border was always going to be between Britain and Northern Ireland all day long. But that border between Britain and Northern Ireland is a lot softer than exists between Britain and, say, actual EU countries. Even when the protocol's fully implemented, which is a long way off being, it is still a benefit to Northern Ireland's economy. As a direct result of the protocol, Northern Ireland can export to Britain as freely as before Brexit. There's nothing in the protocol that hurts that. The harm, such as it is entirely for British businesses wanting to export to Northern Ireland. But Northern Ireland also gets to export goods freely to countries within the single market as well. This makes Northern Ireland unique in Europe in being able to export goods, only goods, freely to almost the entire continent. And if Ireland were to reunify, this would be lost. That wouldn't be the case. A hard border would then definitely be set up between Britain and all of Ireland. And that would hit trade both ways across the border. And what's more, the DUP's belligerence is making this outcome way more likely. Where they should be hailing the protocol as an economic boost for Northern Ireland and trying to claim it as a Brexit win, despite it being the opposite of what they actually expected to happen, they're trying to destroy it. But there is no way to destroy it. They're just hitting their heads against a brick wall. Yes, the UK government have a bill passing through Parliament with the stated intention of allowing ministers to disapply whatever parts of the protocol they like. Yes, the UK government has shown no signs that it has any respect for the rule of law or keeping their own word. I mean, these are Tories after all. And the purpose of this bill is to stop British courts stopping the government from dissolving the protocol. Because if they tried to do it now, the British courts would simply order that the measures have to be put back in place. It will still remain illegal in international law, but international courts have much less power. But the UK government doesn't dare do this because we can't survive the trade war. The reason they're doing it, the reason this bill's passing through is basically political. It was there to sort of appease certain factions within the Conservative Party who think that it can be, and even they don't necessarily want it to be applied. They just think it's some powerful bargaining chip to get concessions from the EU. You'd have to be mad to think that Rishi Sunak, is now the Prime Minister, is actually going to do this as well. Because as Chancellor, he expressed considerable alarm at the prospect of a trade war with the EU last year, when it looked like the then Brexit Minister David Frost was going to announce his Article 16 nonsense. Fortunately, Boris Johnson was also alarmed and told Frost to pull back. At the time, they were under the impression that the rest of the EU wouldn't consider it worth the lost trade just to back up Ireland. Again, this is the way Tories think. They think, well, you know, if I was part of this union, which we used to be, and I wouldn't put myself out for one tiny little member state. I mean, so of course the rest of the EU won't, because people always think that other people think like them. But then the major economies of the EU said, no, we would have to dissolve the trade and cooperation agreement if you do this. And the government thought better of it. They thought, oh, we don't want that. So yes, Sunak has done some sort of deal with the ERG over the protocol. I don't know what it is. It doesn't sound to me like it's one that involves its complete destruction, because consider that two hardcore Brexiteers, Chris Heaton-Harris and the notorious Steve Baker, are in charge of the Northern Ireland office from the UK government's point of view, and they have not been talking up the prospects of destroying it. Quite the reverse. They've been talking about a negotiated deal. They've also been attacking the DUP for blocking moves towards stabilising the situation in Northern Ireland. So, you know, you're getting the impression that even the swivel-eyed loons in the Conservative Party have largely lost patience with the DUP. So what happens now? Well, we need to have more Stormont elections. That's what the rules say. Come middle of next month, not next month, January. Towards middle of January, they have to take place, I think. But nobody believes the results will be fundamentally different. You know, there's a rule which, I don't know, I suppose it must have been necessary when the Good Friday Agreement was being negotiated, but it's very unhelpful in practical terms, whereby the executive must be formed in a power-sharing move between the largest Republican and the largest Unionist party. Some people are calling the current predicament the fault of Brexit, and it is, in a way. But even before Brexit, bear in mind, Stormont only seemed to be functional about half the time anyway. You know, one of the two main parties always seemed to find some excuse for dissolving Northern Ireland's government for the sake of their political purity or something. Even without Brexit, you wouldn't bet against the Assembly having dissolved due to some other childish reason right now anyway. But it is certainly the case that Brexit is the cause of the current collapse. But there also seems to be no way out of this without some sort of reform of something. You know, elections get held again. Okay, what then? Sinn Féin probably it will be the largest Republican party. It may well still end up being the largest party. The DUP will still remain the largest Unionist party. It doesn't really matter between the two which one is technically larger. You know, that's just what's going to happen. It'd be lovely to think that Unionist voters would see the DUP's 5-point plan, under which they campaigned last time, as a cynical lie, because they never intend to form the executive to pursue it. You know, they could then switch their support to the UUP or something. In reality, it's not going to happen, is it? It may well be that more support, if anything, goes to the Alliance Party as the party of reason in Northern Ireland. But they're neither Unionist nor Republican, so they can't actually break the deadlock. So where we are is that the DUP will still hold the key after the next elections. They won't get their protocol demands met. And they will look stupid if they form the executive under those circumstances, because people will say, well, why didn't you just do that before? And save us all this hassle. So Stormont will be trapped permanently in mothballs unless one of the following things happens. First, the rules for forming the executive are changed. I don't really think the political will exists for that, because although I think that would be an obvious solution, I've not seen anyone even consider it, so I'm going to guess that is politically explosive. Second, the DUP are replaced by the UUP as the largest Unionist party. That would require an unrealistic swing to achieve. Third, the DUP have a change of heart. This seems about as likely as one of our thick as mince pugs winning Crufts. Fourth, Ireland reunifies, long term short, yeah, and there'll be plenty of comments going, oh, we just need to do that. But that's a very long way off. And then, and the DUP are making this outcome more likely, but possibly accelerating it, but it's still a long way off. It doesn't solve the problem now. What seems more likely than it has for a while is that the UK agrees a settlement with the EU on the practical implementation of the protocol. There seems to be the political will for this in the Conservative Party. I have to say I'm a little surprised. But perhaps even the ERG sees support for Brexit draining away, and maybe now they see the protocol as an unwanted distraction and they want shot of the whole issue. I don't know. But what does seem to be the case is that if such an agreement is reached at some point next year, that'll be that. The DUP are already getting the cold shoulder from the Tories. Their attempts at chucking their toys out the pram are not really working. But the longer they keep up their assembly blocking protest, the weaker and dumber they will look if they have to abandon it without winning their concessions. You know, it was the case sort of last year and earlier this year that you could sort of tell the Conservative Party were not exactly of one mind with the DUP, but they humoured them. Now they don't even seem to be doing that. The DUP look pretty alone. You know, and normal politics in a situation like this is to find a face-saving way out. You tried this thing, it hasn't worked. Right, try and find a face-saving way out. Because there will be concessions with the protocol settlement that the EU and the UK are working on. Of course there'll be concessions. There'll be several of them. A pragmatic approach would see the DUP go, right, we've lost this, latch onto one of the concessions that's on the table and claim that's all we wanted all along. But I'm not sure pragmatic and DUP really go together. So I'm not sure it's easy to imagine that outcome either. But anyway, those are my thoughts for now. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.